The screams echoing from the northern courtyard could be heard throughout the entire fortress of Arendor. Not screams of pain. These were worse. They were the primal, rage-filled roars of a man losing himself to madness. Elena pressed herself against the cold stone wall, her basket of medicinal herbs clutched to her chest as another inhuman snarl tore through the morning air. Around her, nobles and servants alike scrambled for cover, their faces pale with terror. "Get back!" A guard shoved past her, his armor clanking. "The king's episodes are getting worse. Clear the courtyard." But Elena couldn't move. Through the arched entrance, she could see him. King Darius Nightbane, the most powerful alpha in the realm, chained to the ancient binding stones like a rabid beast. The massive iron chains groaned as he fought against them, his usually regal features contorted with uncontrollable fury. Blood dripped from his wrists where the enchanted shackles bit into his skin. His eyes, which she'd heard were normally like polished steel, now blazed crimson with an otherworldly rage. "How long has he been like this?" Elena whispered to a trembling serving girl beside her. 3 days, the girl whimpered. Ever since the full moon council, they say something triggered his curse. The court physicians tried everything. Sedatives, healing magic, even tried to knock him unconscious. Nothing works. He just gets angrier. Elena knew she should leave. She wasn't even supposed to be in this part of the fortress. As a rejected Omega cast out by her birth pack for being too weak, too small, too supposedly worthless, she was relegated to the outer settlements, only permitted to enter the fortress proper to deliver her herbs to the kitchens. The rejection mark on her wrist burned as if reminding her of her place. She was nobody less than nobody. Another roar shattered her thoughts. King Darius's massive frame convulsed, and one of the chains snapped with a sound like thunder. Guards rushed forward with spelled ropes, but he threw them off like they were children's toys. "Bring the sage, Namora," someone shouted. "She's the only one who's ever been able to." "Sage Namora is 3 kingdoms away," another voice sharp with panic. "We've sent ravens, but she won't arrive for days. He'll destroy himself before then." An elderly advisor said grimly, "Look at him. The curse is consuming his mind. If we can't calm him soon." Eleni watched in horror as the king threw himself against the remaining chains with such force that she heard something crack. Bone or stone, she couldn't tell. Fresh blood now poured from wounds that appeared spontaneously across his body, as if the rage was literally tearing him apart from within. "Why don't they just let him go?" she asked without thinking. Every head within earshot turned to stare at her. The elderly advisor's eyes narrowed as they took in her simple healer's robes, the basket of common herbs, and most tellingly, the faint shimmer of the rejection mark partially visible beneath her sleeve. "Let him go!" The man's voice dripped with disdain. "You ignorant creature." In this state, he would slaughter everything in his path. The last time the curse took full hold, he killed 30 of his own men before regaining himself. Now he's worse than ever. "I just meant," Elena started. Silence rejected one. "You shouldn't even be here." The advisor turned away dismissively. "Guards, remove this." A chain shattered completely. King Darius surged partially free, one arm now unbound, claws extending as he swiped at anyone within reach. A young guard barely dodged the king's claws, tearing through his armor like paper. "Everyone back." The command rang out. "Archers, ready the tranquilizer arrows." "No." Elena surprised herself by stepping forward. "You'll make it worse. Can't you see? The more you fight him, the more the rage feeds on it. And what would rejected trash know about alpha rage?" Someone sneered. But Elena wasn't listening anymore. Something deep in her chest pulled her forward, an instinct she couldn't name. Her grandmother's words echoed in her memory. "You have a gift, little star. One day, when someone needs it most, you'll understand." She'd never understood what that meant. She had no wolf form, no pack bonds, no strength. What gift could a rejected Omega possibly have King Darius's crimson eyes suddenly locked onto her movement? For a heartbeat, the entire courtyard went silent except for his labored breathing. Those burning eyes tracked her as she approached, and his lips pulled back in a snarl that made everyone step further back. Everyone except Elena. "Don't," someone whispered urgently. "He'll tear you apart." She should have been terrified. This was the broken king, the cursed Alpha, whose rage was legendary across 5 kingdoms. Yet as she drew closer, all she felt was an overwhelming need to help him. The pull in her chest grew stronger, almost painful. When she was barely 3 feet away, King Darius lunged with his free arm. Literally didn't think. She simply reached out and placed her palm against his chest right over his racing heart. The world stopped. The moment her skin made contact with his King Darius's entire body went rigid. The crimson bled from his eyes like water revealing stunning storm gray beneath. His snarling expression melted into something like shock, then peace. A gasp rippled through the courtyard. The king's knees buckled, but not in rage. He sank down his free hand, coming up to cover hers, pressing it harder against his chest, as if her touch was the only thing anchoring him to sanity. His breathing, which had been harsh and erratic, steadied into something almost normal. Impossible. Someone breathed. Elena couldn't move. Where her palm touched him, warmth spread through her entire body. Not the burning of her rejection mark, but something soothing, right? Like coming home after a long journey. She could feel his heartbeat slowing beneath her fingers, matching rhythm with her own. King Darius's eyes lifted to meet hers, and the look in them made her breath catch. Recognition, confusion, something deeper she couldn't name. Who his voice was, Waro from screaming, but the single word was perfectly lucid. Before she could answer, his hand tightened over hers with surprising gentleness. "Don't," he rasped when she instinctively tried to pull away. "Please don't let go." "Your Majesty," the elderly advisor stepped forward cautiously. "The chains, we should secure you properly while no." The king's voice was stronger now, though his gaze never left Elena's face. "Remove them. But sire, remove them all." It was clearly a command, even spoken in barely more than a whisper. I'm myself again." "How?" someone demanded. What did she do? Elena wanted to answer that she didn't know, that she'd done nothing, but the words wouldn't come. The king's thumb was now tracing small circles against her wrist, right over her rejection mark, and each touch sent sparks through her entire being. "What's your name?" King Darius asked her softly, his pure eyes searching hers with an intensity that made her shiver. "Elena," she managed. "Elena Moonwaver. Elena Lee." He said it like a prayer, like a secret. Then louder, addressing the courtyard while still holding her hand trapped against his chest. This woman just accomplished what no sage, no healer, no magic could achieve. He stood slowly drawing her up with him, still not releasing her hand. The height difference was striking. She barely reached his chest, but somehow she didn't feel small, not with the way he was looking at her. "Your Majesty," she whispered acutely, aware of everyone staring. "I should go. I'm not supposed to be here." "No." The word was sharp, almost desperate. His grip tightened, not painful, but insistent. "You're not leaving, but I'm rejected. I don't belong." Something flashed in his eyes at the word rejected. His free hand rose to cup her face, thumb, brushing her cheek with surprising tenderness. "You belong exactly where you are." The mark on her wrist suddenly burned white hot, and she gasped, but it wasn't pain. It was like something breaking, shattering, falling away. "What's happening?" she whispered. King Darius's expression had changed, a dawning understanding mixed with something that looked like awe. "The goddess," he breathed. "You're not just any Omega. You're another wave of heat pulsed through her." And this time she did cry out. Her knees buckled, but the king caught her, pulling her against his chest. The moment their bodies fully connected, the burning stopped. "Mine," he growled, but it wasn't threatening. It was wondering, protective, absolute. "You're mine. Take your hands off her, Your Majesty." The cold command sliced through the courtyard like a blade. Elenai felt King Darius's arms tighten around her as a woman in elaborate court robes approached her bearing regal, and her expression murderous. Advisor Celine the King acknowledged without releasing Elena. Your concern is noted, but unnecessary. Unnecessary. The woman's perfectly painted lips curled in disgust. You're embracing a rejected Omega in public. Have you completely lost your senses to the curse Elena tried to step back, shame flooding through her, but the king's hold remained firm, protective, rather than possessive. I should go, she whispered against his chest. Please, Your Majesty, this is improper. Look at me. His voice was gentle, but commanded obedience. When she tilted her head up, his steel-cold eyes were blazing with something that made her stomach flip. Do you feel it too? This connection. She wanted to lie to deny the fire racing through her veins where they touched, the way her body seemed to recognize his on some primal level. But looking into his eyes, she could only nod. Sire. Advisor Celine's voice sharpened. The girl is clearly taking advantage of your weakened state. Guards remove her immediately. 2 guards stepped forward uncertainly, clearly torn between obeying the advisor and not wanting to contradict their king. Anyone who touches her king, Darius said softly, dangerously, will lose their hand. The guards froze. You cannot be serious, Celine breathed. She's rejected, marked as worthless by her own pack. She probably orchestrated this entire enough. The king's voice boomed with alpha command, and everyone except Elena dropped to their knees in submission. The weight of his power pressed down on the courtyard like a physical force. Yet she remained standing, unaffected, still held secure in his arms. How Celine gasped from her knees. How was she not affected? King Darius's hand moved to Elena's wrist where her rejection mark had been burning. When he lifted her sleeve, several people gasped. The mark was changing. The ugly scar that had branded her as rejected was fading, replaced by something else. Delicate silver lines forming an intricate pattern that seemed to glow with inner light. A soul mark, someone whispered in awe. But that's impossible. Those are just legends. Not legends, King Darius said, his thumb tracing the emerging pattern. Each touch sent pleasure-pain through Elena's entire being. Truth. She's my true mate, my soul's match. No. Celine struggled to her feet. The prophecy states your true mate would be a pure alpha female, someone strong enough to bear the burden of your curse, not some rejected. Her words cut off in a choke as the king's power pressed against her throat without him even moving. Choose your next words very carefully, he warned. Lal's head was spinning. Soulmates' prophecies. This morning she'd been nobody, just a rejected Omega selling herbs. Now the most powerful alpha in the realm was claiming she was his destined mate. This is a mistake, she said, finding her voice. I'm nobody special. I don't even have a wolf form. My pack rejected me because I'm broken. You're not broken. King Darius cupped her face in both hands now, forcing her to meet his gaze. You're magnificent. Do you know what you just did? You pulled me back from the curse's edge with a single touch. No one has ever been able to do that, but I didn't do anything. You existed, he said simply. That was enough. Before she could respond, he was lowering his head toward hers. Panic and anticipation wared in her chest as his lips drew closer. Your Majesty! A new voice shattered the moment. A young messenger burst into the courtyard, face flushed with exertion. Urgent news from the northern border. King Darius pulled back with a growl of frustration. This had better be important enough to warrant interrupting. The savage Prince Ronan is here, sire. He's demanding an audience. He says he's come to collect what's his. The king went very still. Ronan is here. How did he cross the border without... He brought an army, Your Majesty. 5,000 warriors. They're camped just outside the fortress walls. Elena felt the tension ripple through the king's body. Why would Prince Ronan come here, she asked quietly. It was Celine who answered, her voice sharp with vindication. Because of you, girl. Don't you recognize the name of the alpha whose pack rejected you? The blood drained from Elena's face. Prince Ronan, the younger brother of her pack's alpha, the one who had conducted her rejection ceremony, the one who had carved the mark into her wrist himself, declaring her unworthy of pack protection. He can't be here for me, she whispered. He was the one who cast me out. Unless he's discovered what you really are, King Darius said, grimly. A soulmate's power doesn't manifest until they meet their match. If he realized what he'd thrown away, he'd want her back, Celine finished. And by pack law, since the rejection wasn't completed with a full severance ceremony, she still technically belongs to the Blood Moon Pack. She belongs to no one but herself. King Darius snarled, then softer to Elena, and to me if she'll have me. Before anyone could respond, the courtyard gates burst open. A contingent of warriors in blood moon colors marched in and at their head. Lear's stomach dropped. Prince Ronan looked exactly as she remembered, tall, broadly built, with hair like burnished bronze, and eyes the color of old blood. Handsome in a cruel way, like a blade that promised to cut. His gaze swept the courtyard until it landed on her still pressed against King Darius's chest. His expression darkened with calculation. "Well," Prince Ronan said, his voice carrying across the suddenly silent space. "Imagine my surprise when my scouts reported seeing our rejected little mouse in the arms of the cursed king himself. State your business and leave," King Darius commanded. "You have no authority here." "Ah, but I do." Ronan pulled out a scroll marked with official pack seals. "You see, Your Majesty, the rejection ceremony was incomplete. Ellen Ali is still bound by pack law to the Blood Moon. She belongs to us. I belong to no one." Ellen found her voice, anger overriding fear. "You rejected me. You carved this mark into my skin yourself." "A calculated decision," Ronan said smoothly, his red eyes never leaving hers. "You see, little mouse, we've recently discovered some very interesting things about rejected Omegas who survive their casting out. Powers that only manifest under specific circumstances." His gaze shifted to where King Darius's hand rested on her waist, and his smile turned predatory. "It seems you've already discovered yours. The ability to calm an alpha's rage with a single touch. Do you have any idea how valuable that makes you? She's not a commodity to be traded." King Darius growled. "No." Ronan agreed. "She's a weapon, one that belongs to the Blood Moon Pack, and I'm here to collect her." He snapped his fingers and his warriors spread out in attack formation, unless Ronan continued, his smile widening. "Your Majesty would prefer to handle this more diplomatically. Single combat, perhaps. Winner takes the prize." "I'm not a prize," Ellen protested, her voice stronger now, emboldened by growing anger. But both alphas ignored her, locked in a silent battle of wills. The tension in the courtyard was suffocating, and she could feel King Darius's rage beginning to build again beneath his skin where she touched him. "Your terms?" King Darius asked through gritted teeth. "Simple combat at sunset 4 hours hence. If I win, Ellen returns with me to complete her obligations to the pack. If you win," Ronan's eyes glittered with malice, "I'll renounce all claim to her publicly permanently." "Done," King Darius said immediately. "No." Elena pulled back, finally breaking free of his hold. "You can't just decide my fate between you like I'm property," little mouse, Ronan said condescendingly. "You've never had a choice. Rejected Omegas have no rights except what their pack grants them, and I haven't granted you freedom." Rage, hot and unfamiliar, flooded through Elena's chest. The new mark on her wrist blazed with silver light, and suddenly both alphas stepped back as power-raw, untamed power pulsed from her small frame. "I said," she repeated, her voice carrying a strength she'd never possessed before. "I am not property." The ground beneath her feet cracked. The power erupting from Lyri's small frame sent everyone in the courtyard stumbling backward. Everyone except King Darius, who stood transfixed, and Prince Ronan, whose cruel smile had been replaced with something like hunger. "Fascinating," Ronan breathed. "You've awakened her latent abilities, Your Majesty. How generous of you to prepare my weapon for me." The silver light pulsing from Lyri's skin flickered and died as suddenly as it had appeared. She gasped, swaying on her feet, the surge of power leaving her disoriented. King Darius caught her before she could fall, pulling her against his chest once more. "What's happening to me?" she whispered, her voice shaking. "You're becoming what you were always meant to be," he murmured against her hair. "Your true nature is awakening." Touching, Ronan drawled, but ultimately irrelevant. "The combat will proceed at sunset. I suggest you say your goodbyes now, little mouse. Once I defeat the cursed king, you'll be returning home with me, though I promise your new accommodations will be far more comfortable than your previous ones." The way he said comfortable made Elena's skin crawl. "Your Majesty." Advisor Celine stepped forward. "Surely you're not actually considering this barbaric challenge. Prince Ronan is known for fighting without honor." "Will I accept the challenge?" King Darius said firmly. "But I have conditions." Ronan raised an eyebrow. "Oh, Elena remains under my protection until the combat. She stays in the royal wing with my guards. Any attempt to take her before the fight and your life is forfeit." "Agreed," Ronan said easily. "Too easily my condition. The combat follows old law. No weapons, no armor, no outside interference. Wolf forms only." Several people gasped. Old law combat was brutal, often ending in death. "Your Majesty." "No." Elena grabbed Darius's arm. "You can't. Your curse. What if it takes hold during the fight?" His storm gray eyes softened as he looked down at her. "Then you'll be there to bring me back. I won't let you risk your life for me. It's not just for you," he said quietly so only she could hear. "It's for us, for what we could be together. I've waited centuries for you, Elena. I won't let him take you now." "Centuries," she breathed. "But you can't be more than—" "I'm over 300 years old," he admitted. "The curse that gives me my rage also gives me longevity. I've been searching for my soulmate, the one person who could calm the beast inside me for lifetimes. And now that I've found you—" His hand came up to cup her cheek, thumb brushing over her cheekbone with infinite tenderness. "I would fight 1,000 princes to keep you safe." How romantic. Ronan's mocking voice shattered the moment. "The cursed king thinks he's found true love. Tell me, little mouse, has he mentioned what happens to those who get close to him? Has he told you about Lady Seraphina or the Omega Mirror? Both dead within a moon's turn of claiming his affection." Elena felt Darius tense, his jaw clenching. "Oh, he hasn't told you." Ronan's smile was vicious. "The curse doesn't just give him rage, little mouse. It devours those he loves. The closer someone gets to his heart, the faster they fade. It's quite poetic, really. The monster king who kills everything he touches." "That's enough," Darius growled. But Leeli could see the pain in his eyes, the truth in his inability to deny it. "Is it true?" she asked softly. "The curse—" Darius's voice was rough. "It's complicated, but I would never let it hurt you. I'd die first." "Which is exactly what will happen," Ronan interjected. "One way or another, little mouse, you'll be leaving with me at sunset. The only question is whether you'll be stepping over his corpse to do it." He turned on his heel, his warriors falling into formation behind him. 4 hours, Your Majesty. Try not to lose control and slaughter your own people before then. It would be a shame if there was no one left to witness your defeat." As the Blood Moon delegation departed, Eleni felt the weight of dozens of eyes upon her. The courtyard was buzzing with whispers, speculation, fear. "Clear the courtyard," King Darius commanded. "Advisor Celine, prepare the royal wing. Elena, I will." "I'm not staying in the royal wing," Elena interrupted, surprising herself with her growing boldness. "I need answers. Real answers about the curse, about what I am, about why touching me calms you when nothing else can." "You need rest," Darius said firmly. "Your power awakening has drained." "No." She stepped back from him, immediately missing his warmth, but needing distance to think clearly. "You're asking me to trust you, to let you fight for me, but I know nothing about any of this. Why does Prince Ronan really want me? What is this soulmate bond? And why?" Her voice broke slightly. "Why do I feel like I've known you forever when we just met?" For a long moment, they stared at each other across the space she'd created. Then Darius sighed, running a hand through his dark hair. "You're right," he admitted. "You deserve answers. Come with me. Not to the royal wing," he added when she started to protest. "To the archive. There's something you need to see." He offered her his hand, and after a moment's hesitation, she took it. The moment their skin connected, that warm, safe feeling flooded through her again, and his shoulders visibly relaxed as her touch soothed the ever-present edge of his curse. He led her through winding corridors she'd never seen before, past ancient tapestries and windows that looked out over the vast kingdom of Arendor. Guards bowed as they passed, but she caught their curious, sometimes hostile glances at her. "They don't trust me," she observed. "They don't know you. They're uncorrected. They will learn." If you win the combat when I win the combat, they descended a spiral staircase that seemed to go on forever, lit by crystals that pulsed with soft blue light. Finally, they emerged into a vast underground chamber filled with scrolls, books, and artifacts. The Royal Archive. They're unexplained. The true history of Arendor, hidden from all but the royal family. He led her to a section dominated by an enormous tapestry depicting a wolf so large it dwarfed mountains, its eyes blazing with divine light. The first Alpha, Darius said quietly, "My ancestor. He was blessed by the moon goddess herself with unprecedented power, but it came with a price. Every few generations, one of his descendants is born with what we call the wolf's rage, strength beyond measure, but fury that consumes everything in its path. And you're the cursed one in this generation," Leeli said softly. "Yes, but there was supposed to be a balance." He moved to another tapestry, this one showing a smaller silver wolf beside the giant one, their forms intertwined. For every cursed alpha, the goddess promised a sanctuary, a soulmate, whose very existence would calm the rage, whose touch would bring peace. Together they would be unstoppable. Apart, the cursed one would destroy everything around them. Elena finished understanding dawning. "But you said others died." "Lady Seraphina Mira. I thought they were my sanctuary," Darius admitted, pain etching his features. "I was wrong. The curse tested them and found them wanting. They weren't strong enough to bear its weight." "And you think I am?" Elena asked incredulously. "I'm rejected, powerless." "You're neither of those things." He turned to face her fully, his crystalline eyes intense. "Don't you understand the fact that you were rejected despite being a sanctuary? It shouldn't have been possible. Someone or something interfered with your destiny. And Prince Ronan knows what I am," Elena realized with growing horror. "He rejected me on purpose to keep me weak, to use me later as a weapon," Darius confirmed grimly. "A sanctuary can calm any alpha's rage, not just their soulmates. In the wrong hands, that power could be used to control armies, to manipulate kingdoms. If Ronan gets you back, a bell tolled somewhere above them, deep and resonant. 3 hours until sunset. Darius said, 'La, I need you to understand something. This combat, it's not just about keeping you from Ronan. If you truly are my sanctuary, then together we can break the curse entirely. No more rage, no more isolation. We could have a real life, a real future. And if I'm not," she asked quietly, "if I'm like the others and the curse—" "You're not," he said with absolute certainty. "I knew at the moment you touched me, the others eased the rage temporarily like a bandage over a wound. You heal it. You make it disappear entirely. That's never happened before." Before she could respond, a guard burst into the archive, face flushed with panic. "Your Majesty, Prince Ronan, he's demanding to see the girl. He says it's his right under old law to speak with her before combat." Darius growled the sound purely wolf. "He has no rights." Actually, Advisor Celine's voice came from the doorway, having followed them to the archive. "He does. Old law states, any challenger may request an audience with the prize of combat. To refuse would be seen as cowardice." Elenali felt her stomach drop. The last thing she wanted was to be alone with Prince Ronan. But looking at the tension in Darius's face, she realized refusing might make things worse. "I'll go," she said quietly. "Absolutely not," Darius started. "I'll go," she repeated more firmly, squeezing his hand. "But not alone. Old law doesn't say the audience must be private, does it?" Celine looked surprised. "No, actually, it doesn't." "Then you'll come with me," Elena said to Darius. "Both of you will. Let him say whatever he plans to say, but he won't intimidate me. Not anymore." Something like pride flickered in Darius's eyes. "You're already stronger than you know." As they made their way back up from the archive, Elena's mind raced. 3 hours until combat. 3 hours to figure out what Ronan really wanted, why he'd rejected her, if he knew what she was, and how to ensure Darius survived the fight. Because despite everything, the danger, the confusion, the impossibility of it all, she knew one thing with absolute certainty. She couldn't lose him. Not when she'd just found him. Not when every touch felt like coming home. The rejection mark on her wrist pulsed with silver light, almost completely transformed now into something beautiful, something powerful, something that marked her as his and him as hers. The meeting with Prince Ronan was held in the Great Hall, a vast chamber with vated ceilings and windows that cast long shadows across the marble floor. Ronan stood at its center like he owned the place, his bronze hair gleaming in the afternoon light, his blood-red eyes tracking Elena's every movement as she entered, flanked by King Darius and advisor Selene. "Ah, the little mouse comes to hear the truth at last," Ronan said, his smile sharp as a blade. "Tell me, have you figured out yet why your awakening happened now after 23 years of dormcancy?" Elena kept her chin high despite the tremor in her chest. "Why don't you enlighten me, since you seem to enjoy the sound of your own voice?" Ronan laughed, the sound echoing off the stone walls. "There's that fire. I always knew it was there, buried beneath all that Omega submission. It's what made you perfect. Perfect for what Darius growled, his hand finding Eleni's lower back protectively. For my grand experiment, of course." Ronan began to circle them, his movements predatory. "You see, the sanctuary bloodline was thought extinct, wiped out in the Great Purge 2 centuries ago when kingdoms feared their power. Imagine my surprise when my pack's seer detected one hiding in our own territory, a little orphan girl with no idea what she was. Elenielli's breath caught. You knew. Even when I was a child, you knew. I knew," Ronan confirmed. "And I waited, watched, made sure you stayed weak, isolated. The perfect conditions to ensure your power stayed dormant. Because a sanctuary's gift doesn't just calm alpha rage. It can amplify it, redirect it, weaponize it, but only if the sanctuary is properly conditioned." "You mean broken," Eleni said, understanding flooding through her with sickening clarity. "You rejected me to break me." Breaking was just the first step. The rejection mark I carved into you wasn't just symbolic. It was a binding rune designed to suppress your true nature while keeping you tethered to me. Every moment of pain you felt, every time that mark burned it, was feeding me information. Your location, your emotional state, your growing power. Darius's entire body had gone rigid beside her. "You've been tracking her, monitoring, waiting for the perfect moment." Ronan's eyes gleamed with triumph. "Did you think it was coincidence that I arrived just as her powers awakened? The moment she touched you, Your Majesty, the binding rune alerted me. Her sanctuary nature had finally emerged, and it was time to collect my weapon." "I'm not your weapon," Eleni said through gritted teeth. "No." "Then let me demonstrate." Ronan pulled out a small crystal vial filled with dark liquid. "Do you know what this is?" "Little mouse concentrated rage essence extracted from feral alphas. 1 drop can send a normal wolf into a killing frenzy that lasts for days." Selene stepped forward in alarm. "Your Highness, that substance is forbidden." But Ronan had already uncorked the vial and downed its contents in one swift motion. The effect was instantaneous. Ronan's eyes blazed from red to black, his body convulsing as raw, primal rage flooded his system. His bones began to crack and reshape claws extending as he partially shifted. A roar of pure fury erupted from his throat. "Guards," Selene shouted, "protect the king!" But Ronan, despite the rage consuming him, turned his black gaze to Elena and spoke with terrifying clarity. "Touch me." It wasn't a request. The binding rune on her wrist suddenly blazed with agony, and against her will, Elena found herself stepping forward. "No." The move to stop her, but Ronan snarled. "1 more step, Your Majesty, and I'll let the rage take me completely. How many will I slaughter before you can stop me? Touch me, Elena. Now." The command in his voice, amplified by the binding rune, was irresistible. Lorelai's hand reached out, trembling, and the moment her fingers made contact with Ronan's arm, she understood his true plan. Her power flowed into him without her consent, calming the artificial rage, bringing him back from the brink. But more than that, she could feel him pulling on her energy, draining her, using her like a battery to fuel his own strength. "You see," Ronan said, his voice smooth again as the rage receded. "With you bound to me, I can induce rage in myself, or any alpha, then use your power to control it. I could turn entire armies feral, then bring them back under my command. I could make kings bow, make kingdoms fall." Elena tried to pull her hand away, but the binding held her in place as Ronan continued to drain her energy. "Let her go," Darius commanded, his voice deadly quiet. "Certainly." Ronan released her abruptly, and Elena stumbled backward into Darius's waiting arms. She was shaking, drained, violated by the forced use of her power. "That binding will only grow stronger," Ronan said conversationally. "Unless, of course, you complete a true mating bond with someone else. But that would require mutual marking under the full moon, witnessed by pacts sealed in the ancient way. And since tonight isn't a full moon and you have no pact to witness," he shrugged, "well, after I kill your would-be mate at sunset, you'll have no choice but to return with me." "There has to be another way," Elena whispered, desperation clawing at her chest. "There is," Celine said suddenly, her face pale but determined. "The Queen's right." Everyone turned to stare at her. "The Queen's right is a myth." Ronan scoffed, though his eyes narrowed slightly. "The Queen's right is ancient law," Celine corrected. "If an Omega with royal mate potential invokes it, she can challenge her rejection directly. Not through combat, but through trial of spirit. If she succeeds, all previous bonds and marks are dissolved. Even if it exists, she can't invoke it," Ronan said, though his confidence seemed slightly shaken. She would need royal sponsorship, witnesses of noble blood, and most importantly, his smile returned. Vicious. She would need to survive the trial itself. No rejected Omega has ever survived the Queen's right. "What kind of trial?" Elenale asked. Celine hesitated. "You would have to face the moon goddess's judgment directly. She would test your spirit, your worth, your true nature. If she finds you worthy, you'll be freed from all previous bonds and granted the right to choose your own fate. If she finds you wanting, you die." Ronan finished cheerfully. "Your soul is consumed, erased from existence. No afterlife, no reincarnation, complete obliteration." The hall fell silent as the weight of this settled over them. "I'll do it," Elena said. "No," Darius said immediately. "Absolutely not. We'll find another way." "What other way?" Elena turned to face him, her eyes bright with determination. "If you win the combat, Ronan's binding will still exist. He'll still be able to track me, control me, use me. If you lose..." She couldn't finish the sentence. "The combat is set for sunset 3 hours hence." Ronan reminded them the Queen's right, if invoked, must be completed within that time. She'd have to choose now. Face the trial and possibly die, or wait for our combat, where you'll certainly die, Your Majesty. After all, I haven't mentioned my secret weapon yet, have I? He pulled out another vial, this one filled with silver liquid that seemed to move on its own. "Liquid Moon's Bane," he said casually. "One scratch from my claws coated in this during our fight. And your curse won't just rage. It will consume you from the inside out. You'll become a mindless beast permanently. And protocol demands such creatures be put down. Either way, little mouse, you're coming home with me." Darius moved so fast, Ronan barely had time to dodge. The king's hand wrapped around the prince's throat, lifting him off the ground. "You dare. Threaten. I dare." Ronan choked out, laughing, even as Darius's grip tightened. "Kill me now and my army attacks, your kingdom burns, your people die. All because you couldn't control yourself. Prove to everyone that you're the monster they fear." Elena placed her hand on Darius's arm, and immediately his grip loosened. "Don't. He's trying to provoke you." Darius dropped Ronan, who landed gracefully, rubbing his throat with amusement. "I invoke the Queen's right," Elena said loudly, clearly. "I challenge my rejection and submit to the moon goddess's judgment." "Elenale, no," Darius started. I name King Darius Nightbane as my royal sponsor. She continued, meeting his agonized gaze. I call upon advisor Celine and all present nobles as witnesses. The silver mark on her wrist began to pulse with light, and somewhere in the distance a bell tolled. But this wasn't the castle bell. This was something older, deeper, coming from everywhere and nowhere at once. The goddess hears Celine whispered. The trial begins within the hour. You have that time to prepare. This is delicious, Ronan laughed. Either she dies in the trial, breaking your heart and leaving you vulnerable for our combat, or by some miracle she survives. And I still get to kill you and take her. Perfect. He strode toward the door, pausing to look back. 1 hour, little mouse. I do hope you survive the trial. It would be such a waste to lose my favorite toy before I've had a chance to truly play with it. After he left, Elena's knees finally gave out. Darius caught her, pulling her against his chest. Why? He whispered against her hair. Why would you risk this? Because I'm tired of being owned, she said softly. My whole life I've belonged to others. My pack Ronan, even this bond with you. None of it was my choice. If I'm going to die, at least let it be on my own terms. You're not going to die, Darius said fiercely. I won't let you. You can't protect me from this. The trial is mine alone to face. Then I'll wait for you, he promised. And when you emerge victorious, because you will, I'll be here. What if I don't? He silenced her with a kiss. It was desperate, fierce, pouring all his fear and hope and growing love into the connection. When they broke apart, both were breathless. You will, he said simply, because you're the strongest person I know, rejected, suppressed, bound, and still you stand, still you fight. The goddess will see your worth just as I do. The sacred chamber hadn't been opened in over a century. Located in the oldest part of the fortress, its walls were carved with symbols that seemed to shift and move in the candlelight. At its center stood a pool of liquid starlight, or what looked like starlight, silver and luminous and impossibly deep. The moon, Celine explained as she led Elena into the chamber. When you enter, your spirit will be drawn into the goddess's realm. Your body will remain here. But if your spirit fails the trial... My body dies too, Elena finished. She stood at the pool's edge wearing a simple white shift that seemed almost translucent in the ethereal light. I understand. Do you... Darius paced the chamber's perimeter like a caged wolf. The goddess doesn't test strength or power. She tests truth. Every lie you've told yourself, every fear you've buried, every dark thought you've had, she'll drag it all into the light. Most spirits break under the weight of their own truth. Then I'll face it, Elena said with more confidence than she felt. I've been broken before. I survived. This is different. I know it's different. Elena snapped, then softer. I know, but thereon I need to do this not just to break Ronan's binding, but for me to know who I really am beneath all the marks and bonds and expectations. The bell tolled again, closer now, vibrating through the very stones. It's time, Celine said. Elena turned to Darius one last time. If I don't, you will. But if I don't, she insisted. Don't let rage consume you. Don't become the monster they think you are. Promise me. His jaw clenched. I can't. Promise me. I promise, he said roughly. But you're coming back, Elena. You have to. Before she could lose her nerve, Elena stepped into the moon. The liquid was neither hot nor cold, but something beyond temperature. It felt like stepping into pure energy. It rose around her, over her, through her, and suddenly she was falling through silver, light, and shadow. When the world solidified again, she stood in a place that wasn't quite real. The ground beneath her feet was made of condensed moonlight, and the sky above was an endless expanse of stars. Before her stood a figure that hurt to look at directly. Sometimes a woman of impossible beauty, sometimes a silver wolf the size of a mountain, sometimes just a presence that existed beyond form. Elena Starfall, the goddess, spoke. Her voice like the tide, like wind through leaves, like every mother's lullaby and every widow's wail. You invoke the queen's right. You claim you were wrongly rejected. Show me your worth. The moonlight ground cracked, and suddenly Lorali was falling again, but this time into memory. She was 7 years old, watching her pack celebrate the summer festival while she huddled in the shadows, already marked as different, as wrong, as less than. The crushing loneliness washed over her anew. "You've always been apart," the goddess observed, "always reaching for something you could never have. Is that strength or foolishness?" The scene shifted. She was 15 the day of her first shift. Except there was no shift. Others transformed into magnificent wolves while she remained painfully human, her body refusing to change no matter how hard she tried. Broken voices whispered, "D useless Omega." "I'm not broken," Elena said, but her voice sounded weak even to her. "No." The goddess's tone was neutral. "Then show me your wolf." Pain lanced through Elena's body as she tried to shift, tried to find the wolf that should exist within her, but there was nothing, just emptiness where her other half should be. "I don't have one," she admitted, tears streaming down her face. "I've never had one. An Omega without a wolf, a sanctuary without power, a mate without choice. What are you?" Leary Starfall, but a collection of absences. The scene shifted again. The rejection ceremony. Prince Ronan's blade carving into her wrist, the pack's collective relief as she was cast out. But now she saw more. Saw Ronan's satisfied smile. Saw the rune taking shape. Saw the magic binding her. "You were betrayed," the goddess acknowledged. "But you also surrendered. You accepted their judgment of your worth." "Why?" "Because I believed them," Elena whispered. "I believed I was worthless." And now another shift. The courtyard. They're on in chains, raging the moment her hand touched his chest. "Now I know I have worth," Elena said, voice growing stronger. "My touch calms him. My presence brings peace." His peace, the goddess corrected. "But what about yours? You trade one master for another one, bond for another. Where is Lay in all of this?" The truth of it hit like a physical blow. Even with Darius, kind as he was, she was still defined by her usefulness to others. "Show me," the goddess commanded, "who you are when no one needs you. Who is Elena when she's not calming rage or serving others or trying to earn acceptance?" The memories fell away, leaving Elena standing alone in that space of moonlight and stars. For a long moment, she couldn't answer. Who was she without those roles? She started, then stopped. "I don't know." "Then you fail." The goddess began to turn away. "Wait," Elena called out. "I don't know because I've never been allowed to find out. From birth, I've been shaped by others' expectations. But that doesn't mean I'm nothing. It means I'm possibility." The goddess paused. "I may not have a wolf." Elena continued, strength building in her voice. "But I have something else. I have the courage to stand before you knowing I might be destroyed. I have the compassion to help someone who is suffering even when it cost everything. I have the will to invoke this right, even knowing I might fail." Pretty words, the goddess said, but words aren't truth. What is your true nature beneath all the bonds and marks and expectations? Elena closed her eyes, reaching deep within herself, past the rejection mark, past the soul bond, past every label that had been placed upon her. And there, in the deepest part of her being, she found it. Not emptiness light. Pure, silver, radiant light that had always been there waiting. "I'm not broken," she said, opening eyes that now blazed with silver fire. "I don't have a wolf because I am something else, something that was hidden, suppressed, but never destroyed. And what is that?" "I am the bridge," Elena said, understanding flooding through her. "Not fully human, not fully wolf, but something in between. I am what happens when the goddess's light takes a different form. I don't shift into a wolf. I shift into pure energy, pure healing, pure connection. That's why I can calm any alpha. Not because I'm their Omega, but because I'm the goddess's own hand bringing balance where there is chaos." The space around them exploded with light, and suddenly the goddess was visible in her true form, terrible and beautiful, ancient and eternal. "You speak truth at last," she said, and for the first time there was warmth in her voice. "You are not Omega. You are Luminary, the light bringer, the peace weaver, the one who stands between. Your rejection was not just wrong, it was blasphemy against my design. The rejection mark on Lee's wrist began to burn, but this time she welcomed the pain. She watched as the binding rune Kale had carved dissolved, replaced by marks of pure starlight that spiraled up her entire arm. The queen's right is satisfied. The goddess declared, "You are freed from all false bonds, all wrongful marks. Your fate is your own to choose. But know this, your true power is only beginning to wake. What you felt until now is a candle. What you're capable of is the sun." "What about Darius?" Leal asked. "The soul bond was never a bond of ownership, but recognition. His soul recognized yours as its complement. Whether you accept that recognition is your choice, but choose quickly. Child, the Prince of Blood Moon has already begun the combat and he fights without honor. What but the time moves differently here? You've been in trial for 2 hours. Your king fights for you even now. Poison blade against cursed rage." "Send me back," Elena pleaded. "Please remember," the goddess said as the world began to dissolve. "You are not Omega. You are luminary. Show them what that means." Elena gasped as she erupted from the moon pool, water that wasn't water streaming from her skin. But it wasn't water. It was liquid light. And everywhere it touched, flowers bloomed spontaneously. Elena lie. Celine rushed forward. "Thank the goddess. You've been under for hours." "The combat. Ronan attacked early. They're in the courtyard and it's not going well." Lyerly didn't wait to hear more. Power surged through her veins, not in uncontrolled bursts like before, but in waves she could direct. She ran her bare feet barely touching the ground, leaving a trail of silver footprints that glowed with inner light. She burst into the courtyard to find chaos. Darius and Ronan were both in partial wolf form, massive and terrible, locked in vicious combat. But Ronan's claws dripped with silver poison, and Darius was losing. The poison was working its way through his system, driving his curse to new heights. His attacks were becoming wild, uncontrolled. Around the courtyard's edges, Ronan's warriors stood ready with weapons, clearly prepared to attack the moment their prince gave the signal. This wasn't a fair combat. It was an ambush. "Stop," Elena commanded, and her voice carried a power that made everyone freeze. She stood at the courtyard's entrance, but she was transformed. Her skin glowed with soft silver light. Her hair floated as if underwater, and her eyes were pools of liquid starlight. The marks on her arms pulsed with power that made the very air shimmer. "Impossible!" Ronan snarled, turning from Darius. "You should be dead." "I was judged worthy," Elena said, stepping into the courtyard. Each footstep left a small crater of crystallized light. "Your binding is broken, Prince Ronan. I am free. Then I'll just have to bind you again." He lunged at her with poison claws extended. Lale didn't move. She simply raised her hand, and Ronan slammed into a barrier of pure light, sending him flying backward. "I am not Omega," she said, her voice echoing with otherworldly power. "I am luminary, chosen of the moon goddess, bringer of balance, and you, Prince of Blood, Moon, have been judged unworthy." She turned to Darius, who was on his knees, the poison and curse fighting for dominance in his system. His eyes were flickering between pewter and red, his body convulsing. "Darius," she said softly, approaching him slowly, "you know me. You see me for who I truly am." She placed both hands on his chest. And this time her power didn't just calm, it purified. The silver poison was burned away by her light, the curse itself recoiling from her touch. But more than that, she could feel his soul reaching for hers. And this time she reached back willingly. The light pouring from Elena's hands into Darius was so bright that everyone in the courtyard had to shield their eyes. When it finally dimmed, Darius knelt before her fully human again, the red gone from his eyes. Not just temporarily, but completely. The curse's hold was broken. "How?" he whispered, staring up at her in awe. "The curse feeds on rage and isolation," Elena explained, her hand still on his chest. "But I'm not just calming it. I'm replacing it with something stronger. Connection, choice, love freely given. This is touching, Ronan," snarled, getting to his feet. "But I still have an army, And you little Lightbringer are still just one person." He raised his hand to signal his warriors, but before he could bring it down, a howl split the air, then another and another. From every direction, wolves emerged. Not just any wolves. Rogues, loners, packless wolves who had been living in the shadows of Arendor, drawn by the luminaries' awakening. Dozens of them all staring at Elenay with something like reverence. "What is this?" Ronan demanded. "They felt it," Celine said in wonder from where she'd followed to witness. When she emerged from the trial, every wolf for miles felt the call. A luminary hasn't walked the earth in 500 years. She's not just any wolf. She's the bridge between all wolves. "I reject this," Ronan roared, beginning to shift into his full wolf form. "I'll kill her myself." But as he lunged, Darius intercepted him. Only this time there was no uncontrolled rage, no curse driving him mad. He fought with cold, precise fury, the controlled strength of an alpha protecting his mate. "You had your chance at combat," Darius said as he pinned Ronan to the ground. "You chose to cheat. Now face the consequences." "Wait," Elena said, and everyone turned to her. She approached where Ronan lay, trapped beneath Darius's grip. "Prince Ronan, you rejected me because you feared what I represented, a power you couldn't control. But that fear has poisoned you worse than any moon's bane ever could." She knelt beside him, and Ronan flinched, expecting pain. Instead, she placed her glowing hand on his forehead. "I could destroy you," she said quietly. "The goddess gave me that power, but destruction isn't balance. So instead, I give you a choice. Submit to judgment. True judgment. Not the kind you tried to force on me or flee now and never return." "What judgment?" he asked wearily. "Feel what I felt," she said simply, and her light poured into him. Ronan convulsed as 23 years of rejection, isolation, and pain flooded through him. Every moment of agony Elena had experienced because of his actions. When it was over, he was sobbing, broken by the weight of understanding what he'd done. "I'm sorry," he gasped. "Goddess, forgive me. I'm sorry." "I forgive you," Elena said, standing. "But forgiveness doesn't erase consequences. You and your warriors will leave now. And if you ever try to bind another soul against their will, the goddess herself will know." Ronan stumbled to his feet, gesturing frantically to his warriors. Within minutes, the Blood Moon forces were retreating through the gates, their prince's ambitions thoroughly shattered. As they disappeared into the distance, the gathered wolves, palace guards, and newcomers alike began to howl, not in threat, but in celebration. The sound rose into the evening sky like a song of freedom. Lorali's transformed state began to fade. The silver light dimmed. Her hair settled, and exhaustion hit her like a wave. Darius caught her before she could fall, cradling her against his chest. "I've got you," he murmured against her hair. "I've always got you." The curse she managed weakly. "Is it really gone?" he confirmed in wonder. "For the first time in 3 centuries, I feel quiet, peaceful, free. Good," she mumbled against his chest, "because I think I'm about to sleep for a week." He chuckled, the sound rich and warm without the underlying edge of barely contained rage. "Then let's get you to bed." "To your bed?" she asked, then blushed at her own boldness. "If that's your will," he said carefully, "Elena, lie. What you said about choosing, I meant it." She said, finding the strength to meet his eyes. "Not because of destiny or bonds or marks, but because when I touch you, I feel whole. Because when you look at me, you see me. Not the rejected Omega, not the luminary, just me. And you see me," he said softly, "not the cursed king, not the monster, just Darius." "Just Darius," she agreed. "My choice, my decision." Around them, the assembled wolves watched as their king lifted the luminary into his arms. As he carried her toward the palace, silver flowers bloomed in her wake, and for the first time in generations, hope settled over Arendor like a blessing. 6 months later, Elena stood on the palace balcony watching the sunrise paint the mountains gold. The transformation of Arendor had been remarkable. What had once been a kingdom shrouded in fear was now thriving. The courtyard where Darius had once been chained now hosted a garden of the silver flowers that bloomed wherever Elena walked. "You're up early." Darius's voice came from behind her, followed by his arms wrapping around her waist. "The Thornwood pack arrives today," she reminded him. "They're the last holdouts against the new Accords. The new Accords laws that protected Omegas from forced rejection, that recognized luminaries as sacred bridges between pacts that ended the barbaric practice of binding runes. It had been Lyrli's first act as queen. They'll agree," Darius said confidently, pressing a kiss to her neck, right where his claiming mark sat beside hers. They had marked each other properly under the full moon with half the kingdom as witness. But these marks were different. Not bonds of ownership, but symbols of choice, glowing faintly with shared light. And if they don't, then you'll do that thing where you glow and speak with the goddess's authority, and they'll fall over themselves to agree, he teased. She turned in his arms, smiling. "I don't glow that much anymore." "You glowed last night," he reminded her with a wicked grin. Heat rushed to her cheeks, remembering the physical connection between them had only grown stronger, especially now that her full luminary powers had settled. Sometimes, when they were intimate, her light would pulse in rhythm with her heartbeat, turning their chambers into a constellation. My Queen Celine's voice interrupted from the doorway. "The Thornwood delegation has arrived early, and there's something else." The throne room was packed. The Thornwood pack stood stiffly near the entrance. But what caught Elena's attention was the small group of young wolves huddled behind them all, bearing rejection marks. "What is this?" she asked, though she suspected she knew. The Thornwood Alpha, a grizzled wolf named Marcus, stepped forward. "These are our rejected. When word spread of what you've become, what you've accomplished, they beg to come. They hope. They hope you can tell them if they might be something more, too." Elena descended from the throne, approaching the group of rejected wolves. They ranged in age from barely 16 to perhaps 30s, all bearing the same hollow look she remembered from her own reflection. She extended her power gently, not the overwhelming force she'd used on Ronan, but a soft probe searching. In 3 of them, she sensed it. That spark of something other, something more. "You," she said to a young girl who couldn't have been more than 17, "you're not broken. You're a healer. Your wolf is there, but it's different. Meant for mending rather than fighting." The girl gasped as Elena's light touched her, and her rejection mark began to change, shifting into something beautiful. "And you," she turned to a young man, "you're a seer. Your wolf walks between present and future." One by one, she revealed their true natures. Gifts that had been mistaken for defects, powers that didn't fit the traditional alpha-beta-omega structure. "But what about us?" asked one of the older, rejected wolves. "I feel nothing special in me," Elena smiled gently. "Not everyone rejected is a hidden gift. Sometimes packs make mistakes out of fear or prejudice or simple cruelty. But that doesn't mean you're worthless. It means you deserve a second chance." She turned to address the room. "Let it be known. Valderis offers sanctuary to all wrongly rejected wolves. Here you'll be given the chance to discover who you truly are, free from the bonds others would place upon you." The Thornwood Alpha cleared his throat. "The Accords. Do you accept them?" Asked his voice carrying the edge of authority. Marcus looked at his rejected wolves, saw the hope in their eyes, the way they gazed at Lyrali, like she was salvation itself. "We accept," he said. As the delegation departed and the throne room emptied, Elena sensed a familiar warmth in her chest. Not the burn of a rejection mark or the pull of a forced bond, but something newer, stronger, the sensation of being exactly where she belonged. Regrets. Darius asked, taking her hand. She thought of the journey, the pain, the trials. The moment she thought she might dissolve in the moon pool. Then she thought of this, the lives they'd changed, the kingdom they'd transformed, the love they'd built. "Never," she said, "this is my path." That night, as the full moon rose over Arendor, Elena stood in the courtyard where it all began. The binding stones had been destroyed, replaced by a fountain that glowed with soft light. Around her, wolves of all kinds, Alpha, Beta, Omega, and those who were something else entirely gathered for the monthly celebration. My queen. Someone called, "Will you show us?" Elenay smiled and let her power rise. Not the overwhelming force of her first transformation, but the steady, warm light of what she'd become. A bridge between worlds, a healer of wounds, a breaker of false bonds. Her light expanded, touching every wolf present, and for a moment, they were all connected. Not through force or dominance, but through choice and recognition. In that light, there were no rejected, no outcasts, no unwanted. There was only pack, only family, only home. When the light faded, Darius was there, as he always was, his hand finding hers in the darkness. "I love you," he said simply. "And I want this," she replied. "Today, tomorrow, always. You're my decision." Above them, the moon smiled down, full and bright blessing, what choice had created where force had failed. The cursed king and his luminary queen, not bound by fate but by the most powerful force of all. Love freely given, freely received, freely chosen every single